Welcome to a very special edition of the JM Report. I am GoodOlJM, and I'm bringing you the Hell in a Cell 2018 review. The show is in the cans, just ended about a couple of hours ago from this point of view. And I gotta say, overall, I thought it was a pretty good show, even though it had a couple of, or maybe a handful of questionable spots, or even, especially the ending towards the end of the show, or actually at the end of the show, leaving everyone with what just happened. So again, I thought it was a pretty good show overall, and let's just get right into it with the kickoff show with the new panel of Jonathan Coachman, basically trading positions with Renee Young, who was at the pay-per-view part of the Raw announced team, as she is now a full-time commentator for Monday Night Raw. Coachman was joined by Paige this time around as one of the special guest panels, as they do every month, along with the usual Booker T and David Otunga, and was it a Rosenberg? Oh my God, I forgot his first name now. I forgot Rosenberg's first name from Hot 97 in New York City, but he was part of the panel as well. No Sam Roberts, but wasn't that big of a kickoff show. It just had a bunch of promos and video packages leading up to each match of tonight, and it did have one kickoff match that originally was supposed to be on the main card, but I believe as of this past Friday on WWE.com, it was announced that it would be part of the kickoff show, as the SmackDown Tag Team titles will be defended by the New Day, taking on the number one contenders of Rusev Day of Aiden English and Rusev himself. It was a combination of Kofi Kingston and Big E, as Xavier looked on, and very good entertaining match. Really no complaints here. I would, as a fan, I guess keeping the kayfabe, if you prefer, I would love to have seen a different outcome, and I don't know if what exactly the plans are as far as Rusev goes, or for that matter, even New Day, because putting the titles back on them after the unfortunate loss of the Bludgeon Brothers when Harper, I'm sorry, not Harper, it was Rowan who went down with an injury after SummerSlam, so they had to relinquish the titles, and who knows what's going to happen with Harper and Rowan when Rowan gets cleared to return. But point being, Harper hasn't been used at all, as far as I can tell. Maybe on house shows, but not on SmackDown Live. So anyway, towards the end, we saw Rusev in complete control of Kingston, and looks like he was about to set up for the accolade, but got a blind tag from Aiden English in the corner. So it was a surprise slash hesitation reaction from Rusev, as Aiden was trying to say, "Oh, let me come in." Rusev, you can see in his eyes confusing whether he wanted to step out or continue punishing Kingston. So he climbs to the top, second rope, matter of fact, and misses a flying headbutt. And then Aiden English climbs to the top rope, and he hits a body splash for for a close 3 count. Kingston will mount on offense, as Rusev was trying to return back into the ring after Aiden English was caught by surprise with a Trouble in Paradise kick to the face. Rusev was trying to get back into the ring, but Big E Langston from the outside prevented that for a 3 count, as Kingston pinned Aiden English and retaining the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Who knows if this will lead to the eventual breakup of Rusev Day, as it was teased during the summer, and they seemed to have patched things up a few weeks ago, leading into SummerSlam or post SummerSlam, and it looks like maybe coming this SmackDown on Tuesday, maybe this will be brought up from Rusev himself and question Aiden English, what he was thinking. Well, they could have won the tag team titles, all that jazz. The actual Hell in a Cell event kicked off with one of the first two Hell in a Cell matches for the night, as Jeff Hardy took on Randy Orton. First time ever for Jeff Hardy inside Hell in a Cell, and for the most part, he looked pretty comfortable out there. This had to have been the most violent match in modern day history in WWE, as blood was drawn and not intentional. When blood is drawn accidentally, you know they're having a great match, and might have been one or two potatoes in there, but accidents happen. And when you use weapons, in this case, tables and ladders and chairs, and even Jeff Hardy's belt from around his waist. At one point, Randy Orton actually unfastened Jeff Hardy's belt and used it as a whip. And it was called what Corey Graves was saying on commentary, that it was a studs belt. Had those little, it's like from one end to another. Besides the belt buckle, you had these studs all over the belt, and actually snapped at one point. Might have been when Randy Orton last used it and broke it over Jeff Hardy's back while he was whipping him, because by the time Jeff Hardy got a hold of it, it was already split in half, and Hardy just started wailing on Randy Orton's back, and you can see the same shape of the belt was across the back of Randy Orton, because he was cut wide open. Not a severe or deep cut, but the impact of the studs making contact with the skin on Randy's back was clearly stiff enough to bust him open, and he was bleeding, he was bruised, and it didn't end there. And Randy Orton decided to become a cast member of Home Improvement, because at one point, having Hardy down in the ring, goes to the outside, looks underneath the ring for weapons, but he pulls out a toolbox, and he's dumping all these tools on the floor. You see all these wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers. So he decides to go for a screwdriver. Might have been an ordinary, had to be at least maybe 7-inch long screwdriver. Picks it up, goes back into the ring, and basically one-upped himself when a few weeks ago he was messing around with Jeff Hardy's earlobe, where his piercing is. So he stepped it up a notch and actually stuck the screwdriver through the ear hole, the earlobe, and started to twist it around as if he was cranking up a fire hydrant to release the water. And he twisted several times, and yeah, it was cringeworthy. But at the same time, at least for me, I couldn't turn away, because this is ridiculous. And it got so bad that you can actually see Jeff Hardy's ear turning white. I mean, it turned white. The blood circulation was cut off, and Hardy was able to fight out of it and unwind or untwist the screwdriver and remove it from his ear. And that's the spot where Hardy just lost it and started wailing on Randy Orton with the belt. So Hardy, trying to have a spectacular finish here, he lays out Randy Orton with a twist of fate, but it was more of a stunner version of his twist of fate. After bringing in the table, Hardy then lays Randy across the table and then sets up a ladder. So he starts climbing up. And then there was a second ladder where the idea was he was going to leapfrog from the smaller ladder to the taller ladder that was closer to the table and crash down onto Randy Orton. Now, it wasn't really mentioned on commentary, but I would like to think that the story there was Hardy realized that if he hopped over, he's going to bang his head on the ceiling of the Hell in a Cell. So rather than just hurt himself unintentionally, he just climbed up to the taller ladder and began to climb, or shimmy, if you will, with one of the support beams of the roof or the ceiling of the Hell in a Cell. Well, from the inside is the ceiling. And he just shimmies over just a little bit, hovering over the table and the body of Randy Orton. So he's swinging back and forth a few times. And just before the last swing, Randy already has removed himself from the table, and Hardy releases his grip and crashes and burns through the table. And at this point, the referee freaks out that, oh my goodness, I need EMTs. Raise up the cage, I need EMTs. And Orton comes to, wondering and asking the referee, what's going on? What are you doing? I'm trying to win here. Do your job and get the 3 count. So with hesitation, while the Hell in a Cell is being raised, the referee counts the three, and Randy Orton wins the match. And Hardy does the stretcher job here. I guess now this would be his time off, where just a few weeks ago there were there were reports about Jeff Hardy wanting to take time off to nurse some injuries, including his back. And you wouldn't know so. You wouldn't even think so because he would have pretty physical matches with either Shinsuke Nakamura, and I believe he had a match with who was it from Sanity, I believe. He had a match on SmackDown, but the point being, he had very physical matches during the time we all thought, or at least most of us did, he was going to take time off. It never happened, so I guess this writes him off television for a while to nurse his injuries. Not to mention the fact himself and Matt Hardy are from the Carolinas, unfortunately, and I believe that this was also mentioned on commentary that their homes might have been affected from the Hurricane Florence over the weekend, and just want to make sure everything's okay. So if it's not injury related or emergency related, and fulfilled his obligations for the pay-per-view, Jeff Hardy, for all we know, could have caught the first flight out of town from Texas, heading back to North Carolina with his brother Matt, who Friday night had his last advertised match and initially announced his retirement through his YouTube channel. Matt Hardy did. So both Hardys are out of the picture for now, and hopefully everything is well with them back home. Next up, we had Becky Lynch taking on Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's title. Probably, I would say, one of the best matches of the night. Both women got very physical. Very good match. Not so much emotion. I would expect a little bit more emotion. They were probably holding off right towards the end, considering the storyline here that Becky feels betrayed by Charlotte after she found a way to get in a triple threat match at SummerSlam for the title against Carmella, when it was supposed to be originally just Becky Lynch one-on-one. But as we know, at the end of that match, Becky snapped and turned on her best friend. And the weeks leading up to tonight, Becky Lynch vowed revenge and payback and will win the championship. So the crowd was behind Becky all the way. Charlotte Flair at best had mixed reactions, but Becky counters a spear towards the end of the match into a roll-up and pins Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So now Becky Lynch is your new Women's Champion, and almost a repeat of the ending of SummerSlam, but quite a bit of a difference in the I guess the presentation, where Becky's celebrating. You see Charlotte off to the side, barely getting up. She's a little bit emotional. Walks over to Becky and extends her hand to shake it, but Becky starts shaking her head and says, "No, you're not taking away. You're not taking this away from me, and I'm out." And just turns around and walks away and leaves Charlotte high and dry in the ring. But I think they made the right move here. Clearly, there's nothing that creative or the writing team can do to have Becky come out to the ring, cut a promo, or her actions that not have the fans get behind her. Because the truth of it all is that Becky's very popular. We all know how hard she's worked. Not that Charlotte hasn't worked either, but Charlotte Flair has had more opportunities than Becky, and it was I guess around the beginning of the summer really where Becky Lynch all of a sudden was getting back into the spotlight, having all these win streaks on SmackDown, defeating everyone, leading into SummerSlam, finally getting the opportunity, and here we are with, I guess, a swerve, I guess, to slow down her momentum, and have one of her best friends unintentionally turn on her, and having the championship more important than friendship. But Becky Lynch is the new SmackDown Women's Champion, defeating Charlotte at Hell in a Cell. And then we have the Raw Tag Team titles being defended by Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, taking on two-thirds of the Shield of Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was in the master for the majority of the time for his team, waiting for the hot tag later on. And I thought the heel team here of Drew and Dolph did a good job of cutting the ring in half. And we would see a series of counters between Ziggler and Seth Rollins trying to hit each other's finishing move, or they'll counter, or they'll kick out. Sling blades here, famous as there, super kicks, all that jazz. And Seth goes for a superplex. He hits it and then immediately tries to hit the Falcon Arrow. But off to the side, you see Drew McIntyre running back into the ring and hits Rollins right in the face with a big boot, essentially having Ziggler fall on top of Rollins as he collapses from the attempted Falcon Arrow. And the referee gets a 3 count. So Drew and Ziggler retain their Raw Tag Team titles. Seemingly, this feud is not over. Also, considering how much of an influence that these 4 guys had during the main event. Then we get to the WWE Championship as AJ Styles defended against Samoa Joe. Very physical match here. I thought these guys really left everything in the ring, including including some blood. This was another bit of a bloody match, as Samoa Joe will catch AJ Styles with a really stiff-looking clothesline and knocking him for a loop. And when the camera pans around to see AJ Styles' reaction, he had a busted lip. He had a real busted lip. So Joe at one point gets AJ Styles in 3 consecutive submission holds. He started off with a power bomb, and then he couldn't get the 3 count, so he steps over and got AJ Styles into a modified Boston Crab. He not tapping out. Okay, so he turns it around into an STF, and he's cinching up, not tapping out. All right, so switch it up and get to a crippler crossface. Not tapping out. All right, so what else can I do? And Samoa Joe attempted a muscle buster. He gets him in position, but never got a chance to execute it. So maybe there is some truth to have that move banned, considering what happened to Tyson Kidd. Even though Samoa Joe would use it a handful of times afterwards, but he hasn't really used it at all, if ever. But at the end, AJ Styles, again, I mentioned that he bled from a killer clothesline from Samoa Joe. And Joe was able to apply the Coquina Clutch, his sleeper chokehold. And he's shaking AJ around, trying to get him to pass out or tap out. And then we get the infamous WrestleMania 8 or Survivor Series 96 ending, ironically both involving Bret Hart, where AJ Styles will take Bret Hart's place and Samoa Joe would take either Piper's or Stone Cold Steve Austin's position. And while still applying the Coquina Clutch, and AJ Styles was able to roll back and maintain his weight on top of Samoa Joe's shoulders, the referee gets the 3 count, the bell rings, and just as the ring announcer is mentioning who the winner is, and as soon as you hear the words "and still," Joe flips and starts yelling at the referee, rolls out of the ring, starts yelling at the commentators, basically saying, he tapped out. What are you talking about? I made AJ Styles tap out. The referee was going to look confused. He didn't know what Joe was talking about. And of course, they're insinuating that all referees' decisions are final, when it's convenient, of course. So Joe storms out, heading to the back, and they show a replay. It was the same angle, if you will, of the live portion of the show. And well, we don't see anything. And inconveniently, Corey Graves is asking, "Oh, well, there's got to be another angle. Please show a different angle." Sure enough, we get the opposite side of the ring, same maneuver, same footage, just the other side of the ring, and just as right before the referee hits the 3 count, sure enough, you see AJ Styles tapping on the opposite side where the referee was not looking at. And Joe has a legit claim here. And it looks like they actually showed the same replay footage on the Titantron, because they immediately cut back to the live AJ Styles look, and his expression pretty much says it all. It's like, oh, damn, they caught it, or they saw me tap. Now either they're gonna go with, or my family's gonna think I'm a failure, or that I did submit to this man and he should be champion, or just the fact that he was trying to hide it, and hopefully nobody get wind of it. They could have easily saved this for SmackDown, but they got other shows coming up, and sure enough, shortly after this, there was a promo later on where Samoa Joe is back in the locker room area with the referee of the match and showing him the footage again of the replay, and the referee was dumbfounded. So here comes Paige trying to calm Samoa Joe down. He wasn't hearing any of it. So you have every right to be upset. So I'm going to grant you a rematch at Super Showdown in October, and you get your rematch there. But Joe claims, like, well, there's got to be something to it because he wins last time with DQ. He wins this time by a fluke or controversy. So now basically the rematch, the third time's the charm, I guess, for Joe, unless they pull some kind of similar copy and paste storyline that like they did with Shinsuke Nakamura when he was chasing the title. But it will be a no DQ, no count out match for the Super Showdown rematch for the WWE Championship between AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. Hopefully, it'll be the outcome that everyone would really want to see, including myself, Samoa Joe becoming the new WWE Champion. Then we had that was probably, I mean, it'll be unfair for me to say, and a bit of selfishness, but the mixed tag team match wasn't everything that was cracked up to be. And although Brie Bella, easy for me to say, performed a lot better than how she did a couple of weeks ago with those botched suicide dives where someone could have been injured, maybe more than one person, and hopefully they removed that from her from her move set and didn't try to do that here tonight. But of course, the heels of the Miz and Maurice were taking full advantage of it. It can only be the man against the man and the women against the women. So they'll intentionally tag in and out to their advantage, so that the faces have no choice but to switch out partners. And it was a pretty good exchange in the middle here, where the face team had the heels on both knees, and they were delivering the yes kicks, only for Miz and Maurice to roll out of the ring right before the last fatal headshot of those yes kicks. And there was a lot of chasing around, and at the end, it was down with Brie and Maurice in the ring. Miz was trying to climb back to break up a pinfall attempt by Brie, and Brie intercepts him and shoves him out of the ring. And then Maurice was trying to blindside Brie from behind, only to reverse it into a roll-up. And I don't think it was mentioned on commentary, but it looked like the momentum carried Brie over, and Maurice ended up getting the roll-up instead on a counter and gets the 3 count. So the Bryan family isn't looking too good against the Mizanian family here, as Daniel Bryan will now go one-on-one with the Miz at Super Showdown. Maybe not the final match of their feud. I'm pretty sure this will go on maybe through Survivor Series, but Daniel Bryan eventually's got to prevail. Maybe at that 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time Super Showdown, but Miz is due for that loss, at least in this case with the Daniel Bryan feud. Raw Women's Tag Team, excuse that, Raw Women's Championship match where Ronda Rousey defends against Alexa Bliss. I gotta say, Ronda's been looking better and better. I know some people still think of her as too green still and not deserving of the title. Well, you tell that to her, see how she reacts. But I think her sell jobs are much better than before. Not that they weren't, but I think she's been improving on that as time goes on. I think someone had a talk with her about the loud call spots like she's had in the past couple of weeks on Raw. So those were toned down. And the story here was that Alexa Bliss controlled the majority of the match, and Ronda had to sell her rib injuries from Raw, and Alexa was also working on the arms. But it took Alexa Bliss to get a little bit too, I guess, overzealous, and her ego got in the way as she's talking trash to Ronda Rousey during one of the submission holds that had like a I don't know how you would call it. It was like a standing version of the old Rings of Saturn that Perry Saturn used to do. So Ronda's just talking all this crap, and you can see Ronda getting pissed off, and she breaks away from the hold, does a couple of judo throws, and almost immediately gets her into her. Ronda does gets her Alexa Bliss into the armbar, and taps out. Alexa just immediately taps out to the armbar, and Ronda retains. Sure, Alexa had Mickey James and Alicia Fox ringside, and Ronda had Natalia, but no appearance from Nikki Bella. If the rumored match for Evolution is to be true, but more than likely they'll probably save that now for Super Showdown, as the Riot Squad will take on the Bella Twins and Ronda Rousey in a six-woman tag team match. So maybe that's where the miscue or the beginning of the downfall between Ronda Rousey and Nikki Bella, leading into Evolution for their title match. And as of now, if that match were to happen, more than likely it will be the main event. Speaking of main events, that leads us into tonight's Hell in a Cell main event inside of Hell of a Cell for the Universal Championship, with special guest referee Mick Foley. Kind of a few weeks late to the party, but in celebration of the 20th anniversary of the King of the Ring 1998 Hell in a Cell match between Mankind and Undertaker, where Mankind took not one but two horrific falls from the top of the cell, one through the announce table and one on top of the ring, which had no give. And my understanding is they loosened up or made the rings today, I guess, more cushioned is the right term to use. So it's not as stiff like Mick Foley did back in '98. So this was a typical basic powerhouse match. Both guys, that being Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns, getting all the signature moves in. Of course, one too many Superman punches, but that's Roman for you. Strowman would try to counter. There was a table spot where Roman would spear Braun through the table in the corner, and then all of a sudden we get Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler running down, trying to get into the cell, to no success, because it was chained and padlocked by the outside referee. And right behind was Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, chasing them around. Drew ran through the audience at one point, leaving Ziggler by himself, being beaten down by Rollins and Ambrose. At the same time, while they're clearing out the Spanish announce table and the American announce table, setting something up. But then from the background, you see Drew McIntyre returning from the crowd, getting back into the faces of Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. Ziggler would try to escape, and he would start climbing the cell to the top. And right behind him was Seth Rollins. So they lay each other out on top. Here comes Drew McIntyre, and he lays out Seth Rollins after attempting to get back to his feet. Ambrose would then start to climb the cage with a kendo stick, and once he gets up there, he beats everybody down, and then gets blindsided by Dolph Ziggler. So all four men are laid out on top of the cell, and they had this cool. I just had a notification from my Simpsons tapped out in the background in case you heard it. But there was a cool shot of the top of the Hell in a Cell, and they had I would guess they had one of those not a crane. What do you call those? Oh my goodness, I can't remember now. But basically, had a wide shot on top of the cell where all four guys are laid out, and I had to take a screenshot. It just looked that amazing. Meanwhile, while all of that was going on inside the ring, Strowman and Roman were just laid out. And I don't know if it was by design or placement, but before all that chaos took place, you couldn't really see Mick Foley on screen, unless it was just me and there was just certain angles where Foley was just out of frame, and unless they went to the hard camera wide shot, Foley was nowhere to be found. But he was in the ring. It was just peculiar and curious to see how that was directed, but I wasn't there, so it went down the way it did. So then there was another exchange between champion and challenger, and then they got both laid out. And all of a sudden, The four men on top were revived, and Rollins was chasing after Ziggler, who was trying to escape or climb down the cage. And they were about halfway down. And this is reminiscing of the very first Hell in a Cell match with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. Both men drive each other's heads into the cell, bouncing off and crashing through the American and Spanish announce tables respectively. So they got a nice little holy shit moment and pop big. And you see in the background a little bit inside the ring, Roman and Strowman showing some signs of life. But then the shock of the night came. Brock Lesnar's music hits. He walks out with Paul Heyman, and you know he had to be a surprise because he wasn't wearing the local town's T-shirt or Suplex City. Just came out in a ordinary black colored plain cut off sleeve shirt and his sweatpants, sneakers of course. So he comes down with Heyman and Heyman gets into the face of the outside referee, telling him to unlock the door, remove the chain. Referee saying he can't do that, he can't do that, and I would assume there was some profanity said here because at least three times the audio will cut off. Not the video, not the stream itself, but just the audio of whatever Heyman was saying with the referee, or maybe it was some of the audience ringside shouting profanity, and they had to cut that. I would have to double check the replay when it's on demand again, but it was weird, and to know that still that kind of thing is still being done, and kudos to the production team to catch that if that was the case. So anyway, the referee kept refusing and refusing to give Paul Heyman the key to the padlock chain. So Lesnar, who's standing there, basically says, screw this, and kicks the cage door down, hinges, chain and all. The chain actually broke, so it might have been a gimmick chain, but who's to say? And then Lesnar just walks into the Hell in a Cell. So he climbs into the ring, jumps over the top rope, picks up what was remaining of the table that they used earlier in the corner, and starts to beat down both men, Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. And in the meantime, Foley was trying to get control with Heyman, but then Heyman, again, I guess he kept the previous can of mace from a few weeks ago before SummerSlam against Roman Reigns, uses it here on Mick Foley to basically get him out of the equation. And then back in the ring, you see Brock Lesnar picking up Strowman, barely got him up. I guess it's been a while, and not to mention Lesnar has lost a lot of weight, keeping up with the Osada testing, and gave a modest looking F5 to Braun Strowman, but the fact that he got him up off his feet is still impressive enough. And then he turns to Roman Reigns and delivers him an F5 on top of Braun Strowman. And that's it. We've just had our first ever Hell in a Cell match where anything goes, there are no rules. You win by either pinfall or submission. Ends in a no contest for a title nonetheless. And keep in mind, this was Braun Strowman's cash-in of his Money in the Bank briefcase, and he didn't win. He didn't lose either. It just no contest. A couple of more referees came down to check on Foley and Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns, and they just went off the air. Lesnar was long gone. He just walked up the ramp and gave one last look back into the ring and like, yeah, I did that, and just walked to the background and disappeared. And they literally go off the air with the carnage left in the ring. We didn't get to see Drew McIntyre or Dean Ambrose ever climb down from the cell, so they were probably still up there. But that was your Hell in a Cell 2018 review. There were rumors late in the day that Brock Lesnar was backstage. I didn't see or read about those rumors until way after the fact. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't, because that added more of a surprise to it. I know I was thrown off guard. I didn't expect this, as many didn't in the arena, even though the rumors was reported that a lot of members of the audience saw Lesnar backstage, and those were the ones that started spreading the rumors. Even though I believe it was Mike Johnson from PW Insider was informed by numerous sources, according to his blog, that Lesnar indeed was backstage, and no clear indication to exactly what he would do if he was going to be part of the show. But we found out and just ruined what I thought was a pretty good Universal Championship match. And again, I don't think it didn't need to be in Hell in a Cell. Just like the Randy Orton Jeff Hardy match, that didn't need to be Hell in a Cell. But main events and to use a gimmick match that's named after its pay-per-view or vice versa, I guess they had to. Not to mention that it was the 20th anniversary of the second Hell in a Cell match on pay-per-view, and who better else to call back to be the referee? I doubt Undertaker would have ever agreed to do something like this. But it is what it is. So all eyes on Monday Night Raw tomorrow and the next night on SmackDown to see exactly what's going to happen with their respective matches. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a rematch between Becky and Charlotte. Definitely a rematch of sorts between Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns for the Universal title, but we got to wait on Baron Corbin on that to see exactly what kind of nonsense they're going to have him spew tomorrow night. Will Lesnar show up on Raw tomorrow night, as he is in fact in preparations to return to UFC sometime early in 2019 for his expected UFC Heavyweight Championship match with Daniel Cormier. And just a lot of more questions. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of more that I'm not thinking of right now, but still didn't take away the fact that it was a great show. Couple of not too many bad spots or botch moves or anything like that. Not so much that it took away from the experience, but I think overall Hell in a Cell was very well put together this year, and all eyes on heading into Super Show Down Under or Super Showdown from Australia a few weeks, and then shortly after that will be Evolution, first ever women's WWE pay-per-view. So if you like what you heard here, like this video and leave a comment below of what you thought of 2018's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Did you like the finish of the main events? How would you have booked it? Was there any other match you would have seen turn out differently? Either way, let me know, and I'll be sure to try to share those on my next Jam Report this coming Friday afternoon from CSP Studios in Tampa, Florida. So until next time, I'm GoodOlJM. Thank you for listening. Everyone be good, enjoy your week, and have a good one.